Okay, so your first step is going to be tracing out your pattern onto the canvas. In your kit, you'll find these pre-folded pieces of paper that have your design image on them. They are taped to this black charcoal paper. And we do want the shiny side down, just like is on the charcoal paper. So you take your canvas, you just lay it down, plop that baby right on top, and all you do is line it up where you want it, and then simply go over the lines. Doesn't have to be hard, just as hard as you would write your name on a piece of paper. The concept is anywhere you apply pressure, you will get a nice outline on your canvas. Take your time with this. There's 5 of them, so once you're done with tracing it, pass it to the person next to you and they can do the same. There should be enough for 2 people to share. Make sure you take the time to get all the lines. I know those trees have a lot of little gaps in there. And like I said, you don't have to push too hard. Really make sure you take the time to do it around your lettering and your figures, your silhouette people. Try to get the shape in there that you need for them. Even though when you go to paint, sometimes they turn out a little silly anyway, it's still best to try to get that shape in there. First thing. These cursive letters are so fun. Take your time with them. When it comes to time to doing them with paint, it's in white paint and it'll make it show up the best. But you can always cheat and use a black Sharpie for your letters if you don't have the patience for the paint. I totally get that. So I just quickly traced it out, and you'll see on my canvas a perfectly traced outline. So now it's time to take all of your paint colors, and if you haven't done so already, you're just going to pour them out onto the paper plate. For now, I'm just going to start with the deep yellow, or the King's Gold, and the orange, which I believe was called pumpkin. Okay, so using your paintbrush kit there, you'll find that you have 2 paintbrushes, a big one, a 1-inch, and a fine detail one. This thing we're not really going to use until it's time for the strings of the swing and the lettering, but all the rest we'll be using your new best friend. So you're going to dip that right in the water, the big one, and pre-moisten those bristles. It's very important with acrylic paint, water-based paint, so it dries up pretty quick. So what you're going to do to start, let me back this up a little. Okay. So what you're going to do to start is you're just going to start doing horizontal strokes, starting from the ground line where the tree is. Go right through the sun, right through the people. You should still be able to see all of your lines on the other side of the tree too. try to keep with those horizontal strokes. It's okay if you don't. You can go right through the tree if you can see the lines fine. And you're going to bring that all the way up to about where the tree branches and leaves fall. So you're going to get all those gaps too, because the sunset's going to pop right through those. You might need to re-up every once in a while. Now when you're doing this, don't forget to paint your sides of it too. The sides of the canvas are important because if you're hanging it up in your house, you don't want to walk up to it and see the white edging. So fill out that whole thing there. You can go right through the sun, right through the people. Get a little chunk of paint or a bristle, just use your nail, pull it out. So just with that gold for now. Make sure it's nice and moist. Nice horizontal strokes. Okay. Once you get your nice base yellow coat down, we're going to go back in with the orange. Just at the top, starting where you finished off with the gold, right here where the tray line is. Start with your orange, do horizontal strokes. Bring it about down to, oh, I'd say just above the sun. You can have it darker in some spots, lighter in some spots. Streaky is good. You want it to be bold in some spots. The sunset really needs to pop. Bring it right through those trees again. And you can always build on it too. Just one layer, just do straight up yellow and then orange. Then you can go back through and add more orange streaks just to bolden it in some spots. And the more you go over an area with your brush, the more it will blend. So if you want to blend the line, if it's just too much of a solid line, just go over it a couple times like this. Every once in a while, take a step back at it and look at it. Make sure your lines are pretty even and straight. It doesn't have to be perfect. So this is what we're working with. It's mostly gold down here and mostly orange up here. Okay, when you're done with that, you're going to rinse that brush off. Try to get as much of the water out as you can. If you have to pinch it, squeeze it out a little into your water cup. That's good. All right, next we're going to take some of that white that you got there, put it on your plate, and you're going to mix up that yellow and white together. You basically just want it to be lighter than your sky so you can see the difference. And going back in, just where the sun is, we're going to put that new lighter yellow. And like I said before, you can go over your people if you want, as long as you can see the lines. If you can't see the lines, just add a little bit of water to your brush and go over it again, and that should help bring them back. Like I said, as long as it's lighter than your sky and you can tell the difference, then you're working with a good sun. Take your time. That roundness is hard to achieve even with the lines. You just keep getting bigger and bigger. Plus you want it to look circular. Okay. Bring it up close so you can see. And then once again, rinse that brush off. The way we do paintings is we start in the background and then we work our way forward towards the things that are closest to us. So we're getting there. All right, after you're done with your sun, you're gonna come back in with that orange. Give yourself a little more if you need to. I just do a little at a time just because it dries out sometimes. So with that orange, pick spots around your sun, and you're just going to tap your brush on the canvas. Just tap, 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 nice and flat. And then you're gonna bring it up and give it some shape. These are your clouds, and you can go right in front of your sun with this, just to give it some dimension. Maybe one on this side, one on this side. You just do it right through your tree. We're gonna paint right over it. And bring it out on the other side so it looks like it's behind your tree. Just with the orange for now. Maybe one on top. Just a very faint one. I just make a horizontal line and then I fluff it up on the top. If you really want them to stand out, you can take some of that lighter color you made for your sun and just highlight the tops of them. Bring it closer so you can see my clouds. They're just simple lines, a little fluffed up. All right, now after this step, you're gonna let it dry for a minute, just because then we can keep adding on these layers. So go ahead and get yourself a drink, get something to snack on, take a break. Okay, so your background should be mostly dry by now. Using this big brush again, you're going to tie up that orange just a tiny bit, and then do a little dip in just some plain white. And we're just going to highlight these clouds once more, allowing it time to dry in between. Really will make that white pop. Even if your orange is still slightly wet, it will still pop. And that'll give your clouds some natural shadows and highlights. And it'll really help them be set apart from the rest of the sky. So wherever you have a cloud, give it some highlights. And where there are highlights, there are also natural shadows, just from where your paint was dark. See, that really makes them pop. Rinse that off again. Okay. So next is a little bit more tricky. We have to go in and do some darker colors where the tree is, and there's some finer lines which we'll have to hit up with the smaller brush in the detail areas. But the hardest part will be going over where your words are and still being able to see them. So in order to do so, we're going to take this big old brush, just a little bit of black, and you're going to start horizontal strokes and try to go around your words first. And then dip it in the water because you want it to be nice and thin where your words are going to be. Kind of like a watercolor. And this will just be our first layer. Now, if you do go over it and it's too hard to see, that's okay. You can always take those patterns again. If you crumple them up, that's okay, just uncrumple. And then when it's dry, you can go over it again. Okay, we're going to do our tree trunk too. The words on the pattern are really just a guideline of where you want the placement to be, and it gives you a chance to learn some pretty fonts. So right now I got my ground and my tree trunk. At this point, don't forget to do your sides again, just because where the ground is will be white. Then you're going to do the same thing at the top. Go right over your words. If you can't see them, just dip it in the water and thin it out. For now, we're just doing horizontal strokes just to keep it nice and thin where those words are. But when you get down to where the tree starts, the tree branch, you're going to do that tapping motion again, just like we did with the clouds, just to get that rough edging. But anywhere that's not right on the edge, you can totally just fill right in with the black. I just lost a word myself, and that's okay. Now, I just went over the word completely. Can't see it a lick. So I'm going to take some water and go over it a little bit until I can see those come back a little bit. You can always take some paper towel too and just dab while it's wet and have it come back just like that. If you have dripping like I just had, because I did a lot of water on top, just grab it with your paper towel. You'll be okay. Just try to catch it before it goes down into your pretty sky. Go all the way around on that edging. Now the thinner branches, like here, you can always hit those up with your smaller brush if you're not comfortable with your 1 inch. Don't be afraid to get in there with the tapping. The rougher, the better. Try to see where we are here. You can even throw an extra if you have no idea where you left off. And you're going to bring those tree branches right off the canvas. I'm just using my 1 inch brush. If you start to get a little drip, just turn it into more foliage. Alright, throw some on the other side too, so it doesn't look so bare. Fill that tree in a little, as long as you have a couple gaps, that's what we're going for. Okay, so with that you should have some roughage, and you're going to let that dry. While you're waiting for it to dry, you can go back down to the bottom and go around where your words were. Just make it a little darker. And we're going to go over the tree trunk with like green and stuff too, so it'll be all good. And like I said, if you lose your words, that's not a problem. You can use the pattern again, or you can just freehand it. So for now, this is what we're working with. Kind of a Saharan sunset. Another thing you can also do while it's wet is make brush strokes with the same big brush in the black, and starting on your ground line here, you're just going to do very short strokes upwards quickly. don't push hard, because the harder you push, the thicker your lines will be. You just want to lightly brush. And on the other side of the tree too. And we're going to go back over that with green too. But it makes it look less smooth. So next, like I said, you're going to take your little baby paintbrush in with the black. You want to do this when your sun and stuff are totally dry. So definitely check on that first. Just do a quick little tap. And starting with your tire swing string, right where the line is. And gently bring it down. Remember what I said, the harder you push, the thicker your line will be. So go very lightly. Every once in a while, you dip your paintbrush in the water. Just to keep it moving smoothly. Okay, and then you can proceed to fill in your figures there, starting with the head. Go very slowly, take your time, make sure you get the shapes right. And note that their hands are resting on the rope there. If you want to give them some hair, you can kind of do the same trick as the grass and just give them a little shape of hair. Like I said, just keep dipping it in the water. It'll help move it. Mind the gaps. You can always fix the shapes later, add more. Can't ever take away though, so start small. And be careful with their feet. Can quickly turn into monster feet if you're not too careful with those little lines. You can have her crossing her feet however you feel is appropriate. And just like that, you got some people. And like I said, you can fix the shapes. Make sure they're holding on to the ropes there. Okay. What you're working with this thin black, if you want to add some seagulls in the background. right over your cloud would be good. Rinse that brush off. And I'll allow you some time to get working on that, and then we'll get to our highlighting of our tree and our words. Okay, so now you're working with your silhouette of a tree and your folks there. We're going to use the big brush yet again. Rinse it off as good as you can. Take out the extra water like we did before. Now we're going to go in with our green. And the green is actually what we will be using to highlight our leaves. Come on, green. And then we're also going to use a little bit of that yellow to highlight our tree. So we'll start with the leaves first. So you're just going to dip your brush right in the green, and using the same tapping motion as you did before, wherever you have leaves, you're just going to tap some green right on there. You'll still see the black through the background. Alright, we're going to continue on with the leaves. And you can start to see it from afar, having that green pop through. You don't need a lot. You want it to be mostly black still, but the green will just help bring your tree to life a little bit. So not too much. Just wherever you have the leaves. And you just stay on the bottom side of it here. You don't have to go up where your letters are going to be. That might just be too distracting. Just wherever you gave yourself that leaf formation. And I'll bring you up close so you can see once we're here. When you're working with the green, you're also going to go back through and do the same thing you did with the grass before. Just very light upward strokes. Might need a re-up. And we're just doing the blades of grass. You're not going to fill in this whole ground part here. Just like the top of it, and then the blades. And you can get the base of the tree too, just to make it look like the tree's behind the grass. Rinse your brush off. I'll bring it closer so you can see. I just got some green up here in our branches. And some green along our grass line. Okay. Then we're going to rinse off the brush again. Dip it in the yellow that you have there. And you're going to tap your brush so a lot of the yellow comes off. You don't want a lot on your brush. And you're just going to very quickly and gently brush some of this yellow onto where your tree trunks are and your branches, just so they are set aside from the darker portions of your tree and you can see a little bit of highlight on your tree. Okay, now we're just going to wait for this whole thing to dry. You can rinse your brush off. And then we're just going to come back in with our words. And that's pretty much all there is to it. But yes, you want it to be dry first. If you lost your words, that's okay. You can freehand it, or you can bring that pattern back out once it's totally dry. Line it up however you want to. Just make sure it's on the tree. And retrace it, and that should put a dark pencil-like sketch on top of your black. And then you can just go right over it with your white paint. So I'm going to wait for it to dry and we'll come back. Okay, I can personally see my lettering on there. It's just a hint of it, but I'm gonna go ahead and go over it with a pen or a pencil just so I can actually see it when I'm painting it. It'll be a little easier just to recover those letters. And then when I go to paint it, I think it's a lot easier, honestly, to set it down and write like you're writing on a piece of paper, but you're welcome to do it on your easel. I'll do it on the easel just so you can see the lettering process. So now you're finally going in with your tiny little paintbrush. I'll get a little closer too so you can see. And then you want to make sure you somewhat, I'll show you the eye trick. So you dip it in your white, and you can see that there's a gobbing amount on there. That'll make a pretty thick line. So I'm going to put it back on my paper plate and twist my wrist, and that'll take the extra off. And with that, you're going to go in with your letters very slowly and lightly. Like I said before, the harder you push, the thicker your line will be. So you want to hardly push it all, using the ball of your palm here to guide your weight on the canvas. Take your time. It'll be easier since it's such a tiny little paintbrush to get these letters in there. Sorry it's backwards from the camera. And once again, what I said before, you can dip it in water every once in a while, and that'll help keep your paint nice and thin and smooth. And then it moves a lot easier for you. And you really shouldn't need too many coats. Just one would be fine. So we got our together. Then in little tiny capital letters, you're going to write is A. Okay. Need some more water on there. If you start to see the black little dots through your white paint, just because it's so dry, you need to dip in the water. It'll smooth out. Just grabbing some more water. Don't forget to twist it, get that extra off. And then we got our wonderful. And then 2B is going to be in capital letters, just like above. Okay. And with that, you have your beautiful painting. I'll get it up close so you can see our finished product. Get some up close shots with the greens. And the yellows on the trunk. Our birds and clouds. And people. And grass blades. And there you have it. A beautiful couple on a tree swing.